Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to this channel World Encyclopedia. So today we will talk about the Trump's tariff. Yes, the Trump tariffs, which is continuing the alarm over looming recessions. As stock markets remain volatile, investors are worried, and the global economy is on the verge of its slump. So today we will see the impacts of Trump tariffs on US, China and world growth. The rout on the global financial markets continued after the reaction to US President Donald Trump, or we can say that it's unpredicted tariff on the most trading partners of the United States. Investors are growing increasingly nervous about the prospect of a wider world trade, which would likely spark a global recession. Yeah, we can say that they say the tariffs are poisoned to have far-reaching effects on world economic growth due to much higher manufacturing costs, falling business confidence, market volatility, and supply chain disruptions. Although the U.S. stock markets regained some lost ground on Monday, still Trump may have exaggerated further decline in Asia and Europe at the start of the week by saying that investors would have to deal with the market sale of for now. Sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something, Trump told to the reporters. Could the global economy fall into the recession? Yes, it's a question for today. JP Morgan said last week it believes that the odds of a global recession are now at 60% by the end of the year, compared to 40% before Trump's vast array of tariff was announced. Although mostly banks warned on the Monday that the Trump doubles down, the new tariff would have immense global implications for 2025 and the year and decades ahead. Asia was hit much harder than Europe, with levies of more than 40% on some key countries promoting the likes of Vietnam, Taiwan, Indonesia, Sydney to seek new trade deals with Washington. China is so far the only major economy to order relatively tariff on US imports falling last Wednesday announced. Beijing ordered extra levies of 34% on American goods and put export curbs on some rare earths. Vital raw material needed to produce new tech and clean energy products. Those tariffs are due to take effect this Thursday. Having the China with an additional 34% tariff last week, Trump doubled down on Monday, threatening to additional 50% tariff if Beijing doesn't withdraw it at least tariff increase. India, which now faces a 26% levy on exports to the US, does not plan to retaliate against Trump's tariff. The Reuters news agency reported on Sunday, citing an unnamed Indian official. New Delhi has been quick to cut some tariff on US imports. India was one of the first countries to seek a new trade deal with Washington during a visit to the White House by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Feb. Imports from the European Union to the US face levies of 20% starting Wednesday. Moreover, we will also see that some positive news did emerge on Sunday when two Trump advisors told US media that more than 50 countries had been in touch to seek new trade deals with Washington. But still, the capital economies said that despite the US president deficient, Trump would soon realize that he had gone too fair. Yes, it's too fair, as we are observing that the stock markets are almost crashed. Investors are at the edge of their losses. The most likely the next step is that Trump will quickly announce a few deals that reduce the prohibitive reciprocal tariff rates on some of the hardest hit countries. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, meanwhile, wrote in an annual letter to shareholders that the quicker this issue is resolved, the better because of the negative effect increasing simultaneously over time and would be hard to reverse. So there is also a question, what about the US economy? How the US economy will deal with it? Obviously, after all, Trump announced this. So obviously there will be the better plan, there will be the best plans and better opportunities for the US economy. So the US economy has averaged nearly 3% growth since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, but now faces what research house called that the self-inflicted economy's catastrophe as a result of Trump's tariff. Although now their economy was stable after the pandemic, but still now Trump announces the new things. S&P Global raised its probability of a US recession to between 30% and 35%, up from 25% in March. Moreover, capital economies meanwhile warned that if the Trump is unwilling to make deals with US trade partners, the stock market rout would soon be followed by a collapse. Yes, will almost collapse in household and business confidence. The UK-based economic research house warned that US inflation could rise above 5% and that the recession would worse if the US Congress fails to pass timely fiscal stimulus because of the Republican infighting. US Federal Reserve boss Jerome Powell last week warned that tariff would likely cause US inflation to rise and growth to slow. He also mentioned an elevated risk of higher unemployment. Markets are now betting that Powell will soon announce US rate cuts earlier than previously expected. Next question is, what do the tariff means for China's growth? Trump's tariffs are widely expected to hinder in China's economies by disrupting export activities and causing substantial market volatility. Beijing is expected to implement monetary and fiscal measures to offset the additional tariff and the people's daily. The Communist Party Mount-based newspaper tried to reassure Chinese readers that the sky won't fall even if the US tariff have an impact. China's foreign ministry on Monday criticized Trump's tariff as economic bullying and inconsistent with international trade rules, urging to US resolve trade tension in a mutually benefits way. Foreign Minister spokesperson Lin Jin refused to say whether China's President Xi Jinping would seek talks with Trump to resolve the trade war. Trump had ruled out a deal with China until the US trade deficit with the world's second largest economy is resolved. The Trump administration has defended the offensive tariffs as a necessary for correcting imbalance between the US and its major trading partner. But the reality behind it, yes, we are observing that reality is not like that. Still, this was insane. The US exported almost 144.6 billion in goods to China in 2024, much less than 439.7 dollars billions in imported. So how we will see that if the tariffs will be the same, obviously world are facing its worse, and it's not so fair that US will also see its impacts. Obviously it will also be negative. So let's see now how Trump deal with the investors, how Trump deal with the world, and now how the world trade will going on.